Hello, I'm Rachel Gardner-Paul, Head of the General Aviation Unit at the UK Civil Aviation Authority. As general aviation starts flying again following COVID-19, we thought we'd ask some of you, including some of our government GA ambassadors, what you think the future holds for general aviation, and also include some safety tips to help us all as we return to the skies.
Hello, my name is Kirsty Murphy. 2020 was supposed to be my fifth display season with the Blades Aerobatics team based at Sywell in Northamptonshire. And prior to that, I did 17 years in the Royal Air Force as a fast jet pilot. I was initially on the Hawk T1 where I was an instructor. I then went to the Tornado GR4 where I flew operationally, and then I did a tour on the Red Arrows. I then left the Air Force and joined the Blades. I got into aviation through my dad, really. He was a navigator in the Air Force when I was younger. And when I was about 12 or 13 years old, I used to spend my summer holidays hanging around the squadron, helping him plan sorties. I'd go up into the control tower to watch him fly, and then I'd meet him back down on the ground for the debrief. And I really loved being part of that sort of team spirit and the camaraderie that you had on the squadron. And I was kind of renowned, had the funny name of being the new junior navigator on the squadron and helping Dad. But it wasn't really till I was 16 when I was successful in getting an RAF flying scholarship and also an Air League flying scholarship that really cemented my ambition. And I went to university to do a aeronautical engineering degree just to prove to the Air Force I was serious about what I wanted to do, and then joined the Air Force at the end of that. I'm really lucky that being a pilot is actually my job. So I hold a high level of currency all the time, and I always have done in the Air Force as well. But I appreciate that not everyone in GA gets that luxury of flying every day, if not every other day. So my top tips for getting back to flying, well, first of all, take it really seriously. I don't think I've flown since February this year, so that's quite some time to have not flown. What am I going to do about it? Well, my first thing is preparation, basically. That will be, I will sit down and I'll start reading through the Pilot Operating Handbook, the POH, and I'm going to start doing that probably next week. I don't think we'll be fine for another couple of weeks at work, but I'm going to start that really early. I also run through my emergency checks, so I make sure that I know all my emergencies. I generally learn my emergencies, and then I can back them up with checks if I need to. Just with the nature of my job, I need to be able to react quite quickly to some things. But by challenging myself to try and remember them is a really good way of making sure you're actually understanding what you're doing. And the way I learn those is, first of all, I'll sit down with a piece of paper and I'll write them out over and over and over again. But also I'll sit in my armchair at home and then just give myself an emergency. So I'm maybe short finals and I get an engine failure, or I'm flying in one of my aerobatic manoeuvres and I can tell the engine notes changed and I realise all pressure's dropped. So I give myself little emergencies. And then on top of that, the sort of extra planning. So it's things that have changed since you last flew. So, airspace might have changed. So don't just get up in the morning to go flying. The day before, the couple of days before, just get your head in the books and really get online and really have a look at the airspace you're looking to use and see if anything has changed. Make sure you're up to date with all the recent publications that have changed. There have been quite a few changes, certainly in the display caps. So I need to make sure I've definitely read those and I'm up to date with what I need to know. And then finally, the few days before I'll go flying again, I will armchair fly some trips. So I'll literally just think about what I'm going to do. And I don't mean getting into the aircraft. I mean starting before that. So what are the things I need to check? The weather, the NOTAMs, and really look in detail as to how I'm still going to access that. Can I still get onto my accounts, or is my password, have I forgotten all my passwords? I'll then sit in an armchair and run through my checks as if I'm starting up, but almost visualizing how that's going to work. I'll run through my radio calls because I guarantee those will now be pretty rusty, and things that previously I wouldn't have thought about and would just roll off the tongue, I'll now be thinking a bit more about. And the main aim of the whole process really is to make sure I'm as well prepared for that first trip as I possibly can be. Because I haven't flown for a while, that little bit more of my brain is going to be required to actually fly the aircraft well. And therefore all that extra capacity that I've normally got is just going to be reduced slightly. So what I want to do is be as prepared as possible so that actually when things maybe don't go as I'd expected or as planned, as always happens in aviation, I'm kind of prepared for it, and also I've got that sort of extra bit of capacity to cope with it. And thinking about that, as I said, I sort of talk through my emergencies to myself and challenge myself with some some emergencies. I also will think about the what if. So if I'm flying and the weather's bad or I can't get into the airfield, just think about those things which you maybe wouldn't do every single trip, because, like I say, your capacity will be slightly more reduced on your first trip back. It's a well-known fact, though, that your first trip back you generally prepare really well for, because you know that you haven't flown for a while and you just really focus on everything very carefully. And I've always found it's my second trip back or my third trip back that are the ones that are actually the scrappiest. So don't relax. That first trip back, you'll be focused anyway because you haven't done it for a long time and it will feel a little bit weird. But that second and that third trip back are the ones where you really mustn't relax. And they're the ones when you maybe go into the brief a bit late or you haven't given yourself enough time to make sure you have checked all the NOTAMs and all the airspace. And that's when little errors can happen and you can find yourself somewhere that you really don't want to be or not talking to the right person. So preparation is key without doubt. And good luck. I think people have had a really different experience of COVID-19 all across the country. My personal experience, I was furloughed, I was at home, and we've got a 4-year-old who was obviously off preschool, so I've been at home full time managing him the best I can. But people have had very different experiences. But the one thing I've really noticed when I talk to people is that everybody has sort of made a slight reassessment of their lives. And I think that's a really good thing for general aviation. I think when we can get out of this, out on the other side, and people are a bit more comfortable getting out and about, and actually general aviation is a brilliant way to get out there, go and explore the countryside without actually having to meet too many people anyway, and go and explore some other airfields maybe that you've never been before. I think people will be quite keen to do that, having been forced to stay inside or forced to restrict their movements so much. It's a real good chance to be able to get out and explore. I think there are some real opportunities for general aviation post COVID-19. In my job, I meet a lot of people who say to me that they've always wanted to be a pilot, or that they've never flown but have always wanted to, or that they flew once, absolutely loved it, and then just never got around to doing it again. I think COVID-19 has made a lot of people really reassess their lives pre the virus and also maybe change their priorities coming out of it. And they're a lot more interested maybe in what they actually do with their spare time and maybe want to do something more constructive with it or learn a new skill. So I think from a general aviation point of view, there's a whole group of people now who, given an opportunity to get into flying, would absolutely love to do so. And that's what we need to capitalise on. So how do we, as the general aviation community, get more young people into flying? Well, it's a really tricky question, to be honest, and there is no one simple or single answer to that. I have to look at my background and when I got into aviation, and I remember specific people who just spent 10 minutes talking to me about their career or their aircraft or what they fly or how they fly. And it's those people that really stick in my mind and encouraged me, and some of them gave me certain opportunities I wouldn't have had otherwise. So I think we all have to look deep down into ourselves and try and offer those same opportunities to other people that maybe wouldn't otherwise get them. For example, when I'm at Sywell, if we're bringing the aircraft in or out and there's some children around and they're obviously interested in the aircraft because they look quite cool, then I'll just stop for a second, open the canopy, let them have a look around, talk to them about what we do. And some of them, you could see the firelights behind their eyes immediately, and they just love it and they're really interested in it. Now, not all children are going to be interested in it or get into flying, but it's trying to capture the ones who just are not going to get that opportunity otherwise. And I think we all have a role to play there. So if you know someone or a younger person who might be interested in flying or has never even seen an aircraft, and you have an aircraft or you have access to one, even just taking them to look at it and see inside and see what the controls are like, maybe let them sit in it. Even that can be a real starter for somebody who has never had any access to aircraft before. So I think we all have a role to play in that.